Welcome to our second episode of the Tell Not Show. I'm here with Kirsha Fox, who is a newly published author. She just released her debut novel and is a homeschooling mother to four and tabletop gamer.
Hello, and this is my co-host, Julia J.K. Allen. She's an editor, author, and author coach. Julia loves her job because she gets to get a hold of books early before everybody else, and she loves helping her fellow authors.
Yes. Perfect timing, Moira. Hello.
Hey.
Welcome.
That's good. I'm here. Okay. I've never used this before, so I was like, I hope this works.
Today, we're super excited to welcome our guest, Moira King, who is a self-identified space cadet from the frozen wasteland of upstate New York. As a Michigander, can totally relate. She was first published at the age of 9 in an anthology for children. She amazingly hasn't lost yet. She studied literature and creative writing in college, and in 2020, finally quit her steady job in corporate banking to chase her dream of becoming a full-time writer. Everyone thought she was crazy. But now she owns a freelance writing business where she works with clients in everything from podcasting to marketing and social media. She published the best-selling Alternative Writer's Guide, Work in Progress, and the Super Short Story Challenge, Short Order. Freelancing allows her the time and freedom to focus on her creative projects while also ensuring she pays her bills. Her fantasy trilogy, Arrow, will most likely be her debut into fiction. Her hobbies include too much television, crappy airport bars, and overthinking everything. Her current whereabouts are unknown. I love it.
I guess I'm here, so.
Yes, we have located and pinpointed Moira down. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here. From reading your bio, I was just like, found my people, right? I was just like, can totally relate to the chaos. And I love it. I'm here for it. So welcome
I'm
to the
excited to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you got started in your writing journey. You got published very young at 9.
Yeah.
So quite an accomplishment. Yeah.
It sounds a lot more impressive than I think it is. I think anybody who published or submitted anything got it published in this anthology. But yeah, it's just like a little 4-line poem that I wrote at 9 years old. And I was like, well, I guess it counts. I'm a published.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started pretty early, knowing that I liked to write, but I didn't really sit down and actually do it and take it seriously until about maybe 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And even then it wasn't anything super serious. I kind of learned that I was a know-it-all back then. I still kind of am, but at least I got a handle on it. But I would read things or watch things and I was like, why did they do it like that? They should have done it like this, or I would have done it like this. I would have done it way better. And then it occurred to me that I could do it. I could do it. I could just sit down and do it. And it's funny because I never did fan fiction, even though it kind of sounds like that's what I did. But I literally took the core idea and added all of the things that I wanted on top of it. So it didn't even you wouldn't even know what it was. But then, so I would do that and nobody knew. I would do it at 10 o'clock at night in my little computer in my room when everyone was asleep, because nobody could know. And then when I went to college, that's when I actually started letting people read it and actually took it seriously as something I would do.
How exciting and how nerve-wracking to open up and be like, yes, I've been writing, and have people read it. I love it. I kind of
so scary.
Yeah. So scary, right?
Yeah.
I kind of have a similar story to that. Not as far as as a teenager writing. I wrote about NSYNC. That was NSYNC. I met them in real life. That was my story. I was going with it. So it wasn't quite fanfic, but it kind of was that vein. I think we all kind of dabble with worlds we already know and love, or fandoms we already know and love.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when I got to college, they were like, oh, you could study creative writing under the English department. And I was like, the light bulb went off and I was like, I could do this for a career. And so totally went with it. So I love your story.
I was a pre-med major and I got 1 year in and I had a 1.9 GPA. It was terrible. And everyone was like, what are you doing? You're not a math science person. We've let this go on too far. So then I
switched. Yeah. I do feel like people are either math science brain or history English major brain.
Yeah. Like, I like
And it's
it, I just can't do it. I just failed.
right. I always loved science class, but then when we do the labs where we had to measure things out, my results were always way off
Terrible.
because I apparently cannot measure to save my life. Don't ask me to bake anything, right?
No.
So tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit about what you write. So your genre you write and why you chose that genre.
So I would say I'm predominantly in the fantasy camp. Like that's my first love. That's what I started reading as like a kid, and a lot of my early stuff was like scenes that I would write out of like a dystopian idea I'd have, or like a fantasy idea I'd have. I've always really liked magic. So that's kind of where I navigate to mostly. But then I like to think of it as like my mature and serious side that I got in college, but I have like an artsy kind of flair. So a lot of my still pretty much on the fantastic side of things, but very surreal, very abstract, like borderline meta. And that was like a lot of my early work that I actually would let people read, like in creative writing class, because I was able to be my fantasy crazy self, but in a way that was like more refined and sophisticated. So I was like, okay, you guys can read this. So
Right.
Arrow is predominantly like more mainstream fantasy, like fun. I tried to put everything that I've wanted into like this story, but then I have all these other ideas that are kind of out there, kind of crazy. I have an idea that I've rewritten probably 100 times over a decade, and I hate it every time because it just doesn't work in narrative. So I've been writing it as a script recently, and I'm thinking maybe I'll try to see if I get any play with that as like a graphic novel. So I never really I don't foresee me being like a person that's just one genre. Like I'm going to publish something, you're never really going to know what it is.
Right. I mean that's the exciting part of life, right? Is that we can constantly be doing something new and trying new things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's really brave of you to take that that leap into becoming a full-time writer. What made you do that? What was
So I hated banking. Like I was a thing that I did because it gave me full time with benefits. I did the thing that they tell you you're supposed to do. And I did that for like 5 years, and it actually taught me I view my life kind of like Pokemon. Like anything I do, I'm trying to catch it all. Like just whatever it is that it has to offer me, I want to grab it, integrate it into my life, and figure out how I can use that. And banking actually taught me a lot on being a small business owner and what that looks like, and how your credit score works, and how to do loans, and how to like open an LLC, and just like all that background that I didn't really have, that I was able to take with me into this next part of life, made it so much simpler because I was just like, okay, we'll keep all of this in mind. So COVID is really what made me make the jump. And it was because I had it up to here. Everyone was losing their jobs. Money was tight for a lot of people. Unemployment was a mess. And then they take it out on me because I worked at and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I was fortunate enough to be able to get on like government assistance, so I didn't have to worry about my bills for, a certain amount of time. Yeah, so I was lucky enough to be able to get some assistance in paying my bills, and from there I was building my client list, and that allowed me to take like free jobs that I could do to kind of build out my experience, and then that led me to higher paying gigs, and then gigs that were more regular. And yeah, I just kind of built from there, and just building more clients, more experience. Like, so now I can find a random thing. Like, I think I ghost wrote a show on a creepy YouTube channel because it was on Upwork, and I was like, I could do that. So I applied for it, and I got it, and I wrote them a script, and it was just like, well, I'll just add that to my thing. And it was because I had all these other things that are similar that I've done that I could market that way.
It just made sense for you then, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Natural step.
For sure.
I love that attitude of like catch it all and integrate it. That I really feel like our journeys in life are so like they're never planned, but they always work out to our like best advantage, where we do something that seems so random, or we do something that seems like it would not fit, but in the bigger picture, it all makes logical steps towards what we accomplish in the end.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna steal that from you probably and be like, I'm playing Pokemon with life. We're gonna catch them all. Yes. I love that phrase. Yeah, I've really I really love your story because so many of us are kind of stuck in situations where we're not our most happy self, and
Mhm.
it can be so intimidating to make the leap. So tell us a little bit about your journey, where you had the kind of business acumen from working in baking, but taking that leap, tell us about freelancing and making
Yeah.
writing your career.
Yeah, so what kind of happened is I ended up being an editor and a contributor to a startup blog that
Okay.
failed. It's no like you can't find it. It's not here anymore. And you were supposed to get paid on ad space, but because it was brand new, there was no ad space, there was no money coming in. So I did that for about 3 months and I kind of approached it because I had I didn't have to worry about money at this point in time. I had like a little bit of a cushion. So I was like, well, we'll just treat it like an unpaid internship like you do in college.
Mhm.
I'll get all of the
Right.
experience out of this I can, and then I'll take that and use that to get a job that pays me. And I did. I did it for about 3 months. I was the social media manager for my section. I was an editor and I was a contributor, so it looked really good on a resume. So then
Mhm.
I applied to this influencer on Upwork. I found her on Upwork, and she was looking for a social media manager. So I was like, I have social media in experience. She was like, let's do it. Failed miserably. Failed miserably. I'm not a good social media manager. I'm a good writer, but when it comes
Mhm.
to like the ins and outs of managing somebody's social, I can barely do my own.
Right.
And that's a lesson in failure because I still work for her. I just don't do it in in social media. She moved me over to
Yeah.
podcast because she liked me, she liked my experience, she liked my thoughts. She was like, "Just this isn't a good fit. Why don't you try this?" So I work with her on her podcast and I do the back admin writing. And I was like, I kind of like this. So I started
Right.
looking for show notes writing, back admin writing, anything in that realm. And I got quite a handful of podcasts that I still work on for that. And then from there was because I had all of these different industries. I saw another post on, I think it was Upwork again, that was looking for people who had like vast industry knowledge. And I was like, well, that's kind of me because I work in podcasting, it's sales, health and wellness,
Mhm.
like woo woo astrology type stuff for this other girl. And then I do like business entrepreneur with that person. So I'm like, well, yeah, I'm
Mhm.
all over the place. I did like love and beauty for the other blog. Like, so I was like, I applied for it. I beat out like 12 people, he said. And now
Oh.
private contract for that. And I've moved all up in there. I started as a blog person and then they realized I had a lot of TikTok experience. So then I started consulting with TikTok. And then one of the coolest things I ever did was they had a client at the time who was the Red Ranger from like the Power Rangers.
Oh, okay.
Consulting with him. So I actually helped write a press release for him, like a press release. That was like one of the coolest things I did. So
That is
yeah.
super cool.
And they're like, "Have you
Yeah.
ever written a press release?" And I was like, "No, but how hard could it be?" And he really liked it. And he I kind of edited and made his like pitch a little bit more punchy. And to the point he
Mhm.
was like, "Dang, this is good." So I was like, "All yours." So he took it and
Right.
no, it was like fun. I'm like, how hard could it
That
be?
is so cool.
That
Yeah.
is really cool, yeah. Because press releases are not fun to write, but I think they're more fun if you're doing it for someone else, right? Kirsch
Yeah.
and I like to introduce each other because it's like, who wants to talk about themselves? And just
Mhm.
be like, "Oh, I'm this and that," So
Yeah, and his was fun too because it was announcing he's working on a comic book is like his
Oh,
thing
yeah.
that he's got like in the works. So it was announcing that. And so that was just like a cool project. I was like, I would absolutely love to write about that. Absolutely.
Oh,
So yeah.
absolutely. And, know someone in the comic industry, so if you did wanna move forward on your graphic novel, you can just be like, "Hey,
Hey,
let's network." Yeah.
remember me? Yeah.
"Remember me?" Yeah.
Well,
"Humble
catch 'em
me
all. It's
from"
like all networking. Like he definitely
Right.
I consulted with him a couple of times. So I definitely think that that's something where I could reach out to him and like it would be like, "Oh yeah, hey, how's it going? What's up? How have you been?"
Right, right. "What are
So,
the steps to this?" Yeah.
yeah, and that's a big part of the freelancing too, is like the brand recognition and like having people know you and then it's like not being
Mhm.
afraid. I know sometimes people have like, "Well, I haven't talked to her in years. Like I can't talk to her now." And I'm like, "Yeah, you can. Yes, you can." She might not remember you, remind her who you are, and it might be awkward and you just leave, or it might work out. Like you just yes, you can.
Mhm.
Right, right. Have the audacity that other people
Yes.
have when they
Have the
shouldn't.
audacity.
Just adopt it. Adopt that mentality that,
Mhm.
absolutely, I can reach out to this person. Yeah, I love that. So tell us a little bit about your writing process, and I'm curious to know if it's different when you're doing it for like the job writing and if you're doing like creative writing.
So for the job writing, it's a little bit different just based on the content that I do.
Hmm.
So for my writing process, it's like for me personally, I call myself a knitter. I'm not a pantser, I'm not a plotter. There's a little bit of planning in there, but it's mostly just knitting. So I have an idea, I go off of vibes. I just write a bunch of chunks of things, like scene ideas. I have dialogue exchanges that kind of like sum up a character. And I do that until I get like a certain word count. And then I kind of look at what I have
Okay.
and I go, how can I
Yeah.
kind of knit this together with a plot to make a story? Um, and that took me 10 years. Like now it seems so obvious that I don't think like a normal quote unquote person. Like
Hmm.
my brain works in its own way. And then like once I started embracing what felt natural for me for writing and stopped trying to write linear and stopped trying to do all of these things that people like, oh, this is how you write a story. This is how you write a story. And I just started doing it. I was like, oh, this is so much easier. Like go out of order, like start at the end
Right.
and work your way back and jump around and just get to the word count. You can fix it later.
I like
No.
that term knitter quite a lot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm like, I
That's
don't think linearly either. Like but
hmm.
I do, it's a little bit, I do it a little bit with my client work, but mostly it's like research. So research
Mm.
oriented. So I just
Hmm.
slob on a whole bunch of research, a whole bunch of ideas, jot it all down. And then I look at it and say, okay, how can I make this into an article? And then I start at the beginning and write the article, but it all kind of starts as a blob of here's all the things that it could be in here. What do you want to use?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's part of the reason why we wanted to do this podcast, Kirsha and I, was because there are so many different ways to do the writing thing, right? Like, there's
Mhm.
so many ways
Oh,
up
so
the
many.
mountain. And a lot of people do get stuck in like the proper thing to do, or like this is how you should do writing, or this is how you should. I mean, like really, like in anything in life, there's like a million ways to do it because everyone's different.
I feel like most people learn about writing in high school. There's a lot of those
Right,
young people, again and again and again, authors are saying, I started writing at 13, 14, 15 years old.
right,
And while the show isn't necessarily aimed at those teenagers, I hope that if they're out there, they're hearing that you can find your own style. You don't have to write out of
right,
order. Like the teachers, they teach you one way, usually,
right.
and grade you one way, and they want you to
Yeah.
just hit your points, and that's, like your content doesn't really matter as long as you're getting your 5 paragraphs in,
Yeah.
right?
Right, or the outline has to be like the Roman numeral outline, and
Yeah.
it has to be really
Yes,
like,
yes,
archaic and yeah.
yes.
Yeah, well, and like that was a big learning. So Arrow, so the first book of Arrow, I have it planned out to be a trilogy with like kind of some spin-offs in the works. I'm a very slow
Mhm.
writer though, so like let's go.
It takes time, yeah.
It took me 6 years to write that first book, and it was because I kept trying to start at the beginning. And then once I realized I got through the first draft, I reconnected with my like old college mentor, which was kind of a game changer for me. Because like he's got a lot of like industry experience, and like that's one of those things where it's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, what do I have to do to keep you on my side? So in writing that first draft, I did it, and then I reworked it, and then he read it and he hated it. Absolutely
Oh,
hated it.
no.
He
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
your idea's good. You're a great writer. But he's like, I don't like it. But it's also like, it's not aimed to him. He's like a 70-year-old man
Mm,
just
mhm.
retired. And I'm like, I'm writing for like 25-year-old women. Like,
Right,
obviously it's
right.
not going to be. So, I kind of like had a bummed out moment. And then I realized that the beginning was not anything like what I started 6 years ago was nowhere near where I was heading now, like my ending.
Right.
I really like my ending. So I reworked like the first 30,000, I rewrote everything. Same plot, just I approached it differently. So got rid of scenes, wrote new scenes. So it's the same basic idea,
Mhm,
rearranged everything. And I like it a lot more now. And it's a lot more because when I started it was very like YA, and now I'm like, I kind of want it to be like NA. And
Okay.
I'm like, it's still reading very YA, which was one of his complaints. And I was like, but I don't want it to be YA. So I'm like, I have to rework it. So like
mhm.
all that time I spent rewriting the beginning 800 times 6 years ago, it's gone. It doesn't even matter. Like it's
Right,
not even the
right.
beginning anymore. So it's like you put like why do you have to do it? Just do it.
Right.
So later.
Yeah, a lot of people get stuck writing chapter 1 because they want it to be perfect before they move on, but
Mhm.
it's just like sometimes you just need to move on and then you'll end up rewriting chapter 1 after you
Yeah.
figured out the
You
end.
don't even really know where you're going until you get there. And then you're like, well, this beginning makes
Right.
sense. I'm glad I spent 3 years on it.
We're Pokemon, we evolve. Our process evolves, our
Yes.
Yeah,
intent to writing evolves. We're
exactly.
not the same people we were when we started.
No, for sure. And I always yeah, I always love the whole rewriting thing can be so daunting because it feels like, oh, I'm wasting the words that I wrote initially, but sometimes
Mhm.
starting with a fresh draft and being like, okay, now I know my story, let me tell it the way I want to now. Like can be
Exactly.
really freeing and helpful.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I find the first draft the hardest. I love the
Right.
rewrite. I love the heavy rewrite where I'm like, I have all the puzzle pieces now. I don't have to think of any of
Yes,
them. I just have to fit them together
it's
better.
much
Like,
easier.
yes,
Sure.
that's fun for
Yeah,
me.
I love that. So what are some struggles you have as an like emerging writer, right?
Mhm.
You're up and coming, you're emerging. What are some struggles you've had that are dealing with or have dealt with that, new authors can look out for?
Yeah, I would say doubt and failure are the 2 big ones.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, like, when I was going out and freelance, that was, like, my crash course in failure because I failed a lot and I
Yeah.
failed really hard. And I kind of learned, like, it's not the end of the world because I failed at
Yeah.
social media, and then I ended up in podcasting, and that was a better fit for me, and I
Hmm.
liked it, and it opened up a whole bunch of other things that I would never considered if I didn't fail, and she didn't fire
Right.
me. Like, that's the thing is I still work for her even though I, like, crashed and burned hard.
Hmm.
So, like, that was a repeated process. It wasn't a one and done lesson. I had to fail a bunch of times and realize, like, my life is still going on and it's honestly pretty good. So, like, I don't know why I'm so afraid of failing. Like, it's fine. It's good. Um,
Right.
the doubt, so my fear of failure is a lot less now. Still
Mm-hmm.
there, but like, I'll just, roll when you land and recover. Doubt is really hard, especially like
Hmm.
with Arrow. I've never come out with fiction before. And with Arrow specifically, it's pretty much everything that I've ever wanted in a fantasy novel that I haven't really gotten. Like, there are other things that aren't in there that I like, but I've gotten those. So these are all like the things that I've wished authors would do differently in some of the other things that I've written. And it's like, well, what if other people don't want that? Like, what if that's just a me thing? Like, you're the only one that would
Right.
want that. And like, that's a big doubt is like, it's a fantasy story, but specifically in Arrow, there's no magic system, which is a little bit against the grain because I think
Gotcha.
a lot of fantasy authors tend to rely on magic
To
to
solve their
solve
problems.
or to do things like take shortcuts because it's right there. It's so easy. And I didn't want
Hmm.
to be tempted with any shortcuts, especially like with this like specific cast of characters. So it's more magic is more legends and ways to explain things that you don't understand. So like this one cast of characters are very legendary. They have like she can't walk through walls, but, like, there are legends that say she can. Like, people are
Oh, okay.
convinced she can, and she's like, "Ha, ha, ha, I'm just really good at what I do." It's like a magician. Once
Hmm.
you learn the trick, it's
Hmm.
not magic anymore, but
Mhm.
until then, it's magic. So, like,
Right.
that's kind of how I approached it, and it's like, well, that could go one of 2 ways. It could be really, really cool, or I could fail on the execution and people be like, "This isn't fantasy."
Right. No, I think that is like a super intriguing idea to me
Mhm.
that magic, like you said, when it's a magician doing a trick, it is magic until you
Mhm.
know the sleight of hand.
Yeah.
But like that doesn't take away from like the appeal or the allure of it. Is the fact that there is sleight of hand going on. It
Mhm.
just makes it more exciting because you're trying to catch it.
Yeah, and then, like so I have my one character is part of this, like, super secret criminal society, and she's the one like, you learn she's very famous in her world, but, like, you don't know who she is because she's that good at what she does, you're not supposed to know. In
Mm-hmm.
her world, she's quite legendary. The real world has never heard of her. And then she kind of partners up with like a soldier war hero who's also very famous in his world, which is the real world. So they're like the same but very different. And
Mhm.
so he knows of this group a little bit, but he thinks they're all like, oh, hogwash superstition. But as he gets to know, so you kind of get to see through his lens, like, oh, now that I understand her, now I know that how she works. Like it kind of the man behind the curtain a little bit, and it's like, she's just
Mhm.
crazy and
Right.
really smart. Like, that's just really what
Right.
this is. So she can move very quietly because she's been taught to move really quietly. So you think she's just in and out and disappears, and it's like, she isn't. She just walked away. You just didn't see it.
Right.
It's okay. The rules are there to be known and then broken. And
Exactly.
it sounds
Right.
like a wonderful story.
Well, thank you. I'm hoping. Fingers
Yeah,
crossed.
yeah, that's like
It's with my beta readers now, so we'll see what they say.
All right.
yeah, no, I love that because like it didn't occur to me that like yeah, writing a fantasy story without like a magical system in
Magic
place, but
system. Yeah.
using legends and
Mhm.
mythology around people and personas, like that's so interesting to me. I love that
Now it's all
idea.
in the execution. The idea is there. Trust
Yeah,
the process.
and there's the doubt again, right?
Yep.
We're always our own worst critics, and like, yeah,
Yeah, and you're like, "Well, what if everyone hates it because they want magic?" Like, I like magic. Well, why did I write a story
right,
with no magic? I'm
right.
like, "Because for a reason. You did it for a reason. Trust that. You
Mhm.
gotta trust that reason."
Yes, trust the process. Trust your
Uh-huh.
intuition. It hasn't failed you yet. I also love your lessons of just like learning that failing happens to
Mhm.
everyone and that it's survivable. It's okay.
Mhm.
Because like we were talking about this when we were recording our first episode of just like I always it always occurs to me that like people have to learn to make mistakes and
Yeah.
people have to learn to fail
Mhm.
and do it with grace and do it with understanding and learn the lessons from it without like letting it overcome them.
Uh-huh.
And so I love hearing your story because it's like it's so there's so much resilience to it, but like just an honest truth too
Yeah.
that like we can fail and it's not the end of the world that we think it's going to be, because I feel like a lot of us writers are perfectionists and we do fear
Yeah.
failure. And like if
Mhm.
you asked high school me like what I feared the most, it was failure for sure.
Failure.
I was just like, yeah, I
But
cannot
it's
make a
the
mistake.
same with rejection too. Like, the first
Hmm.
time someone tells you that your writing is shit, it hurts so bad, but after
Right.
you hear it for the 300th time, you're like, "Yeah, yeah,
Right, right.
yeah."
You can develop a thick skin about it for
Yeah, you're just
sure.
like, "Okay, but what about it? Like, could you give me, like, a real answer?" Like,
Right. Could
Absolutely.
you be constructive with this and like
yeah, like,
pinpoint
what
what you
about
don't
the
like
writing sucks?
exactly?
'Cause
Yeah.
that might help me.
That is such a good attitude to have. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm loving this. How do you kind of balance your job writing life and your creative writing life?
So this question is super interesting because the answer is that I don't.
Okay.
I just view it all as the same thing. It's my paid work and my unpaid work. And I have to do the paid work to pay the
Mhm.
bills, but it's not any more or less important than my
Mhm.
client's work because like I am also my client. I just don't pay me yet.
Right,
Well,
right.
one day it's back pay. So I kind of look at more at deadlines. Like my clients have needs that need to be met. So like I need to meet those needs. And then but like their needs aren't more important than mine. So like if I have podcasts due, I have to do them today. And then I also have to do like this for me. And then I have to make a, TikTok for me. And then I have to make 3 videos for them. So like it's all things, it's all the same job. And I like to
Mhm.
approach it this way because it almost like before when I was working at the bank, my writing, my creative work, my projects, my ideas, I always had to take a back seat. And then I was burning myself out so much with the banking side of it that like if I had the energy to get to it later, I would. But it wasn't the most important. Paying the bills were the most important. But
Right.
now because it's one giant mass, they're all the same thing. So like even with my clients, I work with them. Like I don't work for them. Like we're working together. They need my information, my time, my abilities to like take strain off of them. So I'm working with them. I don't work for them. So if I have a really big deadline coming up, I work it out with them and say, "Hey, I'm working limited hours this week because I need to finish my draft deadline. What are your absolute big needs that you need me to meet, and can I meet them early?" And then I can, or they're like, "Okay, well, we'll push this back." So it's like it's definitely like a working with. And then that
Mhm.
way, like my deadlines are being met as well as their deadlines. And then like I can like if I get all of my podcasting done like in the morning on a Wednesday,
Mhm.
I can then go to the bar with my dog and sit outside for 3 hours and work on, my script. Because it's all the
Oh,
same
I like
job.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I
Very cool.
close down at 5. I mean, I pretty much work 24 hours. Like, let's be real. But
Right.
and potentially then like shut down at 5 because like all of my writing's done, all of my clients' writing is done. So it's like I integrated it very much. So it's like it is all one thing.
I like that you view yourself as a client because that
Mhm.
means you're gonna like also prioritize your needs, like you were saying.
Mhm.
But I love that you also have like just open communication and prioritizing with your clients, just saying like, "Hey, I'm
Yeah.
gonna be doing stuff today. What do you absolutely need done?" Yeah.
My biggest goal is to slowly phase out my freelance as I build up my writer brand.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, like, because I worked in banking, I have absolutely no problem like sharing expenses. I was in everybody's business for years and years and years. So,
Right.
like, for example, my brand right now, like, so I learned how to monetize brands like from my clients because they all have their own brands that they are repping. And I kind of taken that information and kind of applied it to myself. So I came out with Work in Progress, which was like a whole other crazy story about just like
Mhm.
on a whim, I started doing this thing. And then I was like, hey, would you guys want this? And they were like, yes, publish it. So I did. And then it sold out in like a week. And I was like, I guess people want this. So I kept, I sell it on Etsy. I just like let people who want it buy it.
Mhm.
And so this year, I looked it up earlier today. So from Work in Progress and short order, I've made about $11,000 gross. So that's
Okay.
profit is going to be a bit less. So like now the thing is like, that's really great. Like for like an independent published author, like that's really good. You can live off of it for sure. But now it's like, how can I add to that? Monetize more things to add to that. So the freelance right now is supplementing that. And then as
Mhm.
I add to that pool, I can start to like taper off on the freelance. And then hopefully one day I'm just making, gobs of money off my brand. But that's the long game. We'll talk in 10 years.
Right. Right. Oh, we'd love to have you come back 10 years later and do an update recap.
Yeah.
Where are they now?
Thank you for your
Moira
Exactly.
insight,
Yeah,
then. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all like it's a building. It's not, but I do like my story because it shows that you don't have to make it big and make a full-time living off of royalties in order to focus on your writing full time. Like you don't have to do that. It's not
Mhm.
easy. I can't say it's for
right.
everyone. But you don't have to. That's not the way that you have to go. You can do it any way you want.
Yeah, yeah, I'm loving your story because I have a dear friend who also does content writing to supplement his income as he writes his own stories and stuff. And he has the motto that he learned from his dad, who was a poet, of just write a page a day, like get it done, get it down. That doesn't work for me and doesn't work for everybody, but I
Mhm.
love that he has a system that works for him
Yeah.
and just the dedication to do it.
Yeah. No, writing every day was a big game changer for me. I'm definitely not in the camp. Like, I don't think it's mandatory. I think it's
Right.
incredibly helpful if you can do it. But like,
Hmm.
I think where like the issue comes in is that there's this, you have to do it in order to be successful, and you don't. You can be successful like and not write every day. I think it will help
Right.
you a lot
Right.
if you can. Help me. Total game changer for me once I rearranged my entire life in order to just obsess about writing 24/7. But like it's not mandatory.
Know the rules and then
Absolutely.
Yeah,
break them.
yeah.
Right.
What works
Right.
for one doesn't work for all, but, like, also
Mhm.
for me, it's so helpful, I can't, like, gatekeep it, like, it works very
Right.
well for me, so, like, if you
Yeah.
can do
Yeah.
it, I would highly recommend at least trying it to see if it's something that works for you.
Mhm.
So, what
Even if
tips do
it's
you have for writing every day? Like,
um,
writing
so
sprints, or what do you do to?
so for me, write every day is what it really comes down to is keep whatever it is, your creative projects or whatever you're doing, keep it on the forefront. Don't let it go to the back burner. So when I first started writing every day, half the time I would get up early in the morning before the bank and I would stare at my blank screen for 45
Mhm.
minutes and take a shower and go to work.
Right.
So like
Right.
I wasn't actually writing, but like I called it writing because I literally sat down and tried every day,
Oh,
Yeah.
even if
Yeah.
it failed. So then like now I do pretty much write every day. It's not always for me. It's not always me sitting down and writing 2,000 words and like hours and hours of writing.
Hmm.
Sometimes all I have in me is like opening the phone app on my phone as I'm going to bed and writing down like 3 lines of dialogue that I thought of that day.
Right.
And then I call it a day. And then if I do fail or if I do need time off or I am so burned out that I cannot do it, I don't beat myself up. I just try again tomorrow.
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
like I'm not a failure. Like I don't, oh, like I'm not a real right. No, no, I didn't do it today. Dang it. We'll try it
Right.
again
Right.
tomorrow.
I think Kirsha has a similar method because she's just always thinking
Mhm,
about her book, like while you're doing the dishes, while you're doing laundry,
mhm.
I am a mom to 4 young kids,
Oh, wow.
and so there isn't a whole lot of time for me to sit down at the computer, but it's always going on in my
Yeah.
head. I'll open up my phone, put a few little ideas in there, or maybe write myself a note whenever it comes to me. That way, when I do finally sit down at my computer, it just all pours out because I've been thinking about it all day.
Yeah. Or if you forget, you have it written down. Yeah,
Mhm.
no, I love that. I'm pretty so like a big part of my story too was when I got out of college, I had like a 6-year writer's block. Like just I couldn't do
Okay,
anything.
yeah.
Like I couldn't write
Mhm.
anything. I was my mentor, I actually lost touch with him for a long time because I had nothing to show him like in the first year. He was like, "What are you doing?" And
Mhm.
I'm like, "Working at a daycare." Like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm
Right,
doing. I have
right.
no ideas. And then I went through a breakup like 4 or 5 years ago, and I had like ideas for things and I started things and I would dabble, but like it was like creative constipation. Like I'd push and
Mhm.
nothing would come out. And then got my heart absolutely shattered and like it was just this well opened up and I told myself I'm never going to stop because I lost momentum after college and I was like I don't care if it kills me.
Right.
I'm never going to lose that momentum. So even if it's just like writing something in your notes app, just keeping it in the back of your mind, like that's
Mhm.
you're like walking so that way you can jog. Like once you stop jogging, like your
Mhm.
muscles cramp up and I'm like I'm never cramping up ever again. I'll just keep walking.
Yeah, yeah. I think that it's really important that we understand like our writing process to like
Mhm,
prevent things like that.
mhm.
And understand that our writing process like can and will change
Yeah,
for each book, for each different, for each
an
different type of
evolution.
story. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And just like I always just encourage people to be open-minded, like whatever you think your writing process is, like every once in a while try something new because
Mhm,
you never know what's going to be that like spark under your butt to get you going. Yeah,
mhm,
absolutely.
for sure. Agreed.
So, yeah, I love that because one of the questions we do like to ask is like, how do you break out of writer's block? And for you, it was just like, just having this emotional event happen, just like opened up.
Power through it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I write through my
Running
life.
won't stop.
I am that crazy person. It is not easy, it is not fun. I torture myself sometimes, like
Mm-hmm.
but, like, I definitely write through it because 'cause I'm like, "You've been there, you know what it's like." It's even
Right.
worse, like, when like, you're so stuck and it's like you're just so stuck that you can't
Right.
even, like, form a sentence. I'm like, "At least you're forming sentences. Let's write those down." Like, "Let's keep writing
Right, and
those down."
writing can be very therapeutic, like, and I'm not one to poo-poo on that because, like, yeah, writing, like, accessing your emotions and, like, it's a safe way to access your emotions and kind of channel what you're feeling into a character, into their experience for other people to relate to, and it's,
Mhm.
like, it's amazing, right? Yeah,
So
that's why
great.
we're writers, for sure. So, where do you find inspiration the most?
So for it, the most inspiration probably for me would be other people's writings, which is
Mm,
funny because it's never it ends up different than it sounds. So like me reading, like it comes back to how I got started where I'm reading something and I go, "Oh, I like that, but like why didn't you do this?"
mhm,
Or it's like, you're reading, ACOTAR and you're like, "Well, my character would have said this. Like, why did she say that?" And I was like, "Well, I could
Mhm.
have my character say that. I could do a similar situation and have her say that." So it's
mhm,
like, "Okay, well, how do I?" And it's like, "Whoa, wait, if I change this and I add this and I switch this around, this would work really well for this part of my
Yeah.
story." And I have to put the book down, and that's why
So
I'm a
it
super
no
slow reader.
longer resembles its source.
Yeah, and so it's
right.
like, well, I got it from here, but like it's nothing like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like they say, like the best art is stealing, right? The
Mhm.
best art is steal. But it's not in the way you think, right? So it's
No,
just
and like
like, yeah.
I like to think of it as borrowing. Like I borrow a lot from my interests as well, or like my current
Yeah. Hmm.
fixations, or things that I like. Like I have a lot of nods, like in Arrow, that I didn't even realize I really put in there. I put in there just because I needed a space filler, and I was like, oh, I kind of like
Hmm.
that, but let's tweak it. So like it opens up with my character waking up from like a blackout from drinking too much the night before, and she's in a prison cart, and she's like, "Oh God, what happened?"
Right.
Then that I took because I was rewriting the whole beginning like a year ago, and I
Hmm.
didn't know how to start the beginning, and I was playing a lot of Skyrim at the time, and that's how Skyrim Elder Scrolls starts is you wake
Oh,
up and you
right,
start.
right.
So it's like kind of a nod to that, and I was like, well, I could just throw that in there.
Love that game so much.
Yeah. So like my one friend was reading it and she's like, I see it. It's so perfect.
Hmm.
And she's like, I love that because it's like there's no magic, there's no dragons, like so it's like not anywhere close to the same story. She just but it's like if you know me, you know my interest, you're like, oh, that's a
Right.
Skyrim girly.
Yeah.
So like,
So I have to ask, because you're talking about getting inspiration from other people, or other stories. Who's your favorite author, or what's your favorite book, and why?
So this question is fun because my favorite books are not by my favorite authors, which is funny.
Yeah. Okay. Love it.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I think one of my favorite books of all time is probably Red Rising, but I wouldn't say like Pierce Brown is like my favorite author. Like I like him, but like my favorite author of all time is Kurt Vonnegut.
Mm,
Just I really like him, like in his style and his way of writing. Slaughterhouse-Five is one of my favorite books of all time, but like I don't need to reread it constantly. I just have a really big
right.
appreciation. And I think if anyone else were to tell that story, I would hate it because I don't actually like the content. It's just mostly the way that he wrote it and how the
Right.
story unfolds and how he tells this and how he's unstuck in time. Like I just think that's brilliant. And he does that in a lot of his other works. And he does these off the
Yeah.
wall things because it's satire, but it just
This
works
is an
so
asterisk.
well. Yeah. That are
And
like,
an asterisk at the same time.
but I like I really appreciate that. And he just has like such control. And Edgar Allan Poe is another one that I really look up to because he just has such control over his writing, and his prose is so beautiful. So it's like they're not my favorite books of all time. Like
Right.
I would much
Right.
rather do something lighter. Like K.F. Breene is one of my favorite authors. I'll read almost anything she writes, but she's just like an indie author. She's you know,
Oh, okay.
yeah, just like a fun fantasy. But for the most part, if I'm like a one and done, like I read like Sarah J. Maas, but like I like her stories, but I don't know. There's like a lot that I would change about them if they were mine. But then I feel like KF Breen is in a similar vein, but she changes those things. She does the things that I would do. So
Okay.
I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
great. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
she
I'll
also
have
has
to
a
check
Beauty
that
and the
out.
Beast retelling, but it's all about like instead of the curse being like you turn into inanimate objects, there's just like succubi. So every night is just like a giant orgy and everyone is miserable. And it's like really funny. And so it's like Beauty and the Beast, but like really not.
Right. Right.
It's like very much a romance with all these really weird things happening that she has to fix. And I really liked that because it's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. No, that sounds super fascinating. I'll definitely have to check them out.
Yeah, big KF Green fan. She's got a couple of series that I really like.
Yeah, no, I love Vonnegut. I discovered Vonnegut as a middle schooler, and I remember there was like a big scandal because one in high school, one of the teachers had the students read Breakfast of Champions, and as we all know, it starts out with a beaver and an asterisk that are not quite a beaver and an asterisk, and so people were just like scandalized, and I was just like, you're missing the joy, and
Yeah,
like the whole point of that is kind of the ludicrousness of like people and language and all of that stuff.
And I'm
So.
pretty sure in Breakfast of Champions is the one where he tells it in third person and then halfway through he inserts himself in the narration and he starts telling it from first person. And it's just like you're like, whoa, hold on. Because he's like, I was a character this whole time, but you had no idea. And I was just like, that influenced a lot of my short work style, my more out there weird things. I was like, I didn't know that you could play like this.
Know the rules and then break them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I was like, wow, like,
that.
yeah, you can pull that off. So I'm like, I'll tell a story backwards. I'll make the narrator a character. Like, I want to do all that stuff. I want to do a flashback and a flashback and a flashback and then figure out how to come back in a way that you don't lose the figure. Like, I would love to do that stuff. So like, yeah, he was a big influence on me for sure.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, just innovative writing and innovative thinking can be so liberating, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really loved discovering him as a youth. So I know we've talked about writing advice. Like you said, writing every day was a big game changer for you. What's some of writing advice that you hate? I love asking people this.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like there's a lot. I think the biggest one I hate is it's your story, write it however you want, which is,
yeah.
I get some pushback on this one, but like I have like a lot of my success comes from a growth mindset. I never want to assume that I'm the one in the room that knows the most. But I also think it's very important to be able to recognize when you are the one that knows more. So it's like once you can find that line where you don't assume it, but then once you take inventory, okay, wait, no, I definitely am the expert in this situation. You know when to take it with a grain of salt. But I never want to assume. And I feel like with that advice, it's never really as well intentioned as it comes off to be, because a lot of the times I hear it where it's like an agree to disagree, or you try to give feedback and then the person pushes back and gets defensive. So you're like, well, I mean, it's your story. You can write it however you want. And I feel like
Mhm.
they're not like anyone giving you that advice isn't trying to help you per se. Um,
Right.
and
Yes.
yeah, so it's like and I've given it myself, but it's mostly for judgment calls. So it's like something that really doesn't matter. It's more of a matter of taste. That's where I'm
Right.
like, it's your story. You pick. If I like it this way, but it's a judgment call, you could do it that way. It doesn't really matter that much. But yeah, I think like if you're constantly deferring to yourself and your own knowledge and your own opinions and your own
Mhm.
interests, there's never really any place to grow, and you're never going to recognize your own mistakes because nobody's pointed them out to you. It's just
Right.
do it however you want. Make the same mistake over and over again. Like I could go up and jump off my roof right now if I wanted to. Like I don't know if that's necessarily a good idea. I don't know if I should do that.
Right.
But like I
Right.
could if I wanted to. So it's like maybe somebody needs to tell you not to jump off the roof. Like maybe just
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the
No.
problem when you surround yourself with too many yes men who are
yeah.
just
Mhm.
like, oh, yes, whatever you want. And they're not going to let you know, hey, you could do this better.
Yeah.
Right.
You
And that's
shut
what I
down. You're like, I know best. I'm the authority.
Yeah, and
Um,
that's what I really liked about my mentor is he did not like my book, but he was like, "You're driven, you're a good writer. You have, the time, the drive. You're gonna go far. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean a thing." But the fact that he didn't like blow smoke or dodge me, and he was just like, "I hate it,
Right.
but like, let's see what we can do with it."
Right, right. No,
that's
That's
I
so
think
true.
it's important because like a lot of people will say like, "Oh, you just need to put in the hours, you just need to put in the practice,
Mhm,
10,000 words, 10,000 words, all that stuff." But
mhm.
yeah, if you're making a mistake 10,000 times, you're just solidifying the mistake even more, the bad
Yeah.
habit. So, we have to adjust and pivot and reevaluate ourselves and our
Mhm.
writing and then go from there like how do we improve? How do we get better? Because no one's written a masterpiece, you know what I mean, on the
Yeah.
first draft, right?
Mhm.
The first
Yeah.
draft is always rough. The first draft is always hard, and yeah, you're
Being able to
taking an input for a
recognize.
reason.
Yeah, like when
Right.
somebody says like, "Oh, I hate this," like it's really easy to take that to considerate, like, ouch, but I'm like, I also hate things that a lot of people love. So I'm like, what does that really
Right.
matter?
Right.
Like, so like if
Yeah.
somebody says, "Oh, I hate this," I'm like, it's not gonna make me change it. But I'm like, "What do you hate about it?" And then they'll tell me and I go, "Actually, maybe if I did it this way, it would work better."
Mhm.
Right.
So
I
it
think that
Important to
Neil
know.
Gaiman is the one that said, like, if someone tells you something's wrong with your story, believe it. But if they tell you how to fix it, don't believe them, right?
Mhm,
So it's like if someone points out, like, oh, I don't really love that the character does this, and it's like, oh, yes, I see that. I'll work with it. But if they tell you how to fix it, like,
mhm.
don't listen because they rarely know how to fix it. They just know they don't like it.
Yeah, I'll do a lot like, well, I explain like, "Well, I'm not really feeling this part. I think maybe this is missing, or if you did that, like I like to give out options. Or I'm like, maybe if you
Right.
incorporate something like
Mhm.
this, or I like how you did it in this part. So if you do that here, I'm like an idea person. So I'm like, let me
Yes.
just throw out
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
something you're like, oh, actually, no, you're right. Now that I see that, I'm not sure
Right.
this is working, but I liked what you said here. And then it goes, I'll take that, change
Right.
And that's
it
really
around,
helpful. There's
around.
nothing more
Yeah.
infuriating than someone saying, "Oh, I hated it." And you're like, "Well, what did
Why?
you
Yeah.
hate?" They're like, "I don't know. It just wasn't good." You're like,
Right.
Yeah, but why? Yeah. Like, give
"Thank
me
you,"
something.
but
Right. Don't just crap
yeah.
on the story and walk away. Like, give us
Yes,
some
that's
fertilizer to
not
work
cool.
with. Right.
Exactly.
But, because if I've made a mistake, tell me,
Yeah.
definitely.
Absolutely.
Um, but I love that.
Yeah, that just having that attitude can be really helpful because it's like I know like our story as an editor, I understand this really well that like our stories are our babies and they're really precious to us. And a lot of new authors don't have the thick skin to be like,
Mhm.
I'm separating my work and my value as two different things. Like my
Yeah.
writing is one thing, my worth and value as a human being is completely separate. Because a lot of times like they do feel tied into each other. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, anything creative, especially like we put value on it on like whether it's good or not, right? Like we're
Oh,
not
yeah.
allowed to just create as human beings the way birds just sing. You know what I mean? We
Yeah.
don't allow ourselves that freedom, and so I think that it's really important to look at it as like this is a growth opportunity rather
Mhm.
than like I'm trying to nail it. I
Yeah.
love that perspective.
Well, it's even like, so with I did my first, so this year alone, I've rewritten Arrow 3 times. Like,
Mm.
it's been a heavy rewriting process. I finished the first draft. January was my deadline. I gave it to my mentor. He held on to it for a month, was like, "Do you want to fix it before I read it?" And I said, "Yes." But I was so
Yeah.
proud of this. I was like, "It's done." I was like, "Let me rewrite it." So I rewrote it very minimally, and then he read it and then he hated it. And it was like my baby. Like, I was my baby. I was
Mm-hmm.
so proud of it. I was like, "This is brilliant. It's so good." It wasn't that good. Like, it was good, it had
Right. Right.
potential, but it's like, if I had just, like, let it be my baby, it would not have been like, it's much better now. I'm much more
Right.
happy, like, with the way that it's now, and I'm like, had I protected it like it was my baby, it would not, like, these people that are giving you this advice, like, they're not doing it to hurt you, they're doing it because they also want your baby to be the best that it can be, and if you don't
Right.
listen to them, you're gonna have, like, you're missing out basically on an even better baby.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally agree because we can let something be precious or we can improve it, right?
Mhm.
Like, and it can be still precious, but like, yeah, like we need to
It-
refine and
It's
work
a
on
little more
it.
polished. It's a better version. Your baby can
Yeah,
grow up.
yeah, absolutely.
I want to raise a very wonderful baby. So,
Yeah,
if
yeah,
there'll be
yeah.
growing pains to get it there, I will.
Absolutely, yeah. I love that attitude. Yeah, that's a great perspective. Well, now is the time where we like to ask you where we can find you online, where people can learn more about you and your books, and if you have any announcements or anything you'd like to make, now's the time.
Yeah, so I just published, after like 6 months of working on it because it needed to be perfect, my author website. It's
Yeah.
Moira E. King, MoiraEKing, so Moira E. King.
Mhm.
Com. You can find pretty much everything of mine there. I have like my books listed in Etsy, but you can get them from my website and all of my social media. But I'm demoralize on TikTok, D underscore my first name underscore lies, and then right into the ground, right as in WRIT. Um, yeah, on like Instagram. So yeah, but you can get all of that from my website.
Love
Wonderful.
it. Yeah, I absolutely love Demoralize, your handle. When I saw you on TikTok, I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, this is so
Yeah,
clever.
that was,
Play on words. Yeah.
I can't remember if that was like my Xbox handle when I was in college or if it was my Twitter. I don't know. I think Oxymora was another handle I had for a very long time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I like to play with
Oh, I love
the
that.
name. It helps people know how to say it too, because it's spelled Moira, but I don't say the I.
Right.
So people are like, "Oh no, demoralized. Got it. Okay, cool."
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
It's been fun.
And then if you want to say the magic words.
Yes. Thank you for listening and join us next time when we'll be welcoming our next guest. And remember that there is more than one way up a mountain. Uh,
Absolutely.
who will be on our next show? Find us on social media at The Tell Not Show or email us at thetellnotshow@gmail.com.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yay. Thanks, guys.
Thanks again for listening. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and liking. We appreciate all the support. Julia J.K. Allen is an author, editor, and coach and can be found at hijinksrudder.com.
Kirsha Fox is an author, avid reader, gamer, and mother to four, and you can find her at kirshafox.com. Thanks and see you next time.